Adana's hands trembled as she stood at the altar in her ivory gown, the lace train spreading behind her like broken promises. The church was packed, 400 guests, maybe more, all dressed in their finest, phones discreetly positioned to capture what was supposed to be the happiest moment of her life. Kofi stood across from her, his dark skin gleaming with sweat under the chapel lights. His jaw was tight, his eyes distant. Something was wrong. Adana had felt it all morning, but she'd pushed the feeling down, told herself it was just wedding day jitters. The priest's voice droned on, but Adana barely heard him. She was too focused on Kofi's face, on the way he wouldn't meet her eyes, on the way his chest rose and fell with rapid, shallow breaths. "Do you, Kofi Mensah, take this woman?" "Stop." The word cut through the church like a blade. Gasps rippled through the pews. Adana's heart stopped. Kofi's face twisted with something between rage and desperation. "I can't do this," he said, his voice rising. "I won't." Adana reached for him instinctively. "Kofi, what are you?" He grabbed her hand roughly, yanking at the diamond engagement ring. The metal bit into her skin as he pulled it off, making her gasp in pain. Before she could process what was happening, Kofi snatched the microphone from the priest's hands. The feedback screamed through the speakers. "I'm not marrying you, Adana," Kofi announced to the entire congregation, his voice amplified and cruel. "I never wanted this. I never wanted you." The words hit her like physical blows. Adana's vision blurred with tears. Around her, the church erupted, whispers, gasps, the click of phone cameras capturing her destruction in real time. Kofi threw the microphone down and stormed toward the exit. Adana's body moved before her mind could catch up. She ran after him, her bare feet slapping against the marble floor, her massive dress tangling around her legs. "Kofi, wait. Please, we can talk about this." A hand closed around her wrist, firm but not painful. Adana spun around, ready to shove whoever it was away, and found herself staring up at a man she'd never seen before. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and the kind of presence that made the air around him feel heavier. His dark hair was styled back, revealing sharp cheekbones and a strong jaw. But what caught her attention were the tattoos. Intricate designs covered his neck and disappeared beneath the collar of his black suit. Korean characters mixed with elaborate patterns that spoke of meaning and history. His eyes were the darkest she'd ever seen, almost black, and they held her with an intensity that made her forget, just for a second, that her world was collapsing. "Let me go," Adana choked out, trying to pull away. "I have to. I need to stop him." "No," the man said, his accent distinctly Korean, his voice low and absolute. "You don't chase a man who just humiliated you in front of everyone you know. You let him go." "Who are you?" Adana demanded, her voice breaking. "You have no right." He released her wrist but didn't step back. Instead, he turned to face the congregation, all 400 guests who were now watching this new drama unfold with hungry eyes. The man moved past Adana with fluid confidence, walking down the aisle like he owned the church itself. He climbed the altar steps and positioned himself exactly where Kofi had been standing moments before. The priest backed away, his face pale with shock. The tattooed stranger turned to Adana and extended his hand, palm up. "Come here," he said simply. Adana's mind was chaos. Nothing made sense. This stranger, this man with tattoos crawling up his neck and danger written in every line of his body, was standing at her altar like he belonged there. But Kofi's words were still echoing in her head, "I never wanted you," and the eyes of 400 people were burning into her back, and something in this stranger's steady gaze made her feet move. She walked up the steps on shaking legs and placed her hand in his. His palm was warm, his fingers strong as they closed around hers with surprising gentleness. He turned to face the congregation, keeping her hand secured in his, and when he spoke, his voice carried through every corner of the church without him raising it. "I will marry her instead." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the whispers died. Everyone held their breath, waiting to see if this was real or some kind of collective hallucination. Then the church doors exploded open. Kofi came storming back in, his face contorted with rage. "What the hell is happening?" he shouted, his dark skin flushed darker with anger. "Who the hell are you?" The tattooed man didn't even glance at Kofi. He kept his eyes on the priest. "You have a ceremony to perform," he said calmly. "Perform it." Kofi charged down the aisle, his hands clenched into fists. "She's my fiancée. We're getting married." Finally, the stranger turned to look at Kofi. Something in his expression, cold, certain, dangerous, made Kofi stop dead in his tracks halfway down the aisle. When the tattooed man spoke, his voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of absolute authority. "You threw the ring at her. You told everyone here you didn't want her. You walked away." He paused, letting the words sink in. "You made your choice. Now I'm making mine." Kofi's face went from dark brown to an ashen, sickly pale. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. He looked like he might vomit or pass out, possibly both. The stranger took a step forward, positioning himself between Kofi and Adana like a wall. He didn't threaten. He didn't posture. He simply stood there, and the message was crystal clear: "You will not get near her." "Leave," the man said. "Now." Before you continue watching, hit that like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, because the next part are about to take you on a ride you won't believe. Kofi looked between the tattooed stranger and Adana, his face still that terrible pale shade. Something flickered in his eyes, fear, genuine fear, and he turned and practically ran out of the church. His groomsmen scrambled after him like rats abandoning a sinking ship. The doors slammed shut with devastating finality. The stranger turned back to Adana, and his expression softened just slightly. He reached up and wiped the tears from her cheeks with his thumb, the gesture so tender it made her breath catch. "Are you all right?" he asked quietly. Adana stared at him. She should say no. She should scream that nothing was all right, that her entire life had just imploded in front of everyone she knew, that a stranger had just announced he'd marry her and she had no idea why. But what came out was a whisper. "Who are you?" "My name is Ji Hun Park," he said, his dark eyes holding hers with magnetic intensity. "And I'm going to marry you. If you'll let me." "Why?" "Because you deserve better than what just happened," Ji Hun said simply. "Because no one should stand at this altar alone. And because I can give you a way out that doesn't end with you being the woman everyone pities." Fresh tears slid down Adana's cheeks, but these felt different. Less like despair, more like relief, possibility. She couldn't name it. She looked at this stranger, this tattooed, dangerous-looking man who had walked into her wedding and offered to save her, and made a choice. Maybe it was insane. Maybe it was wrong. But it was hers. "Okay," she whispered. Ji Hun's hand tightened around hers. He turned to the priest. "Proceed." The priest looked ready to collapse. "I don't know if I can do this. This is highly irregular. There are procedures, licenses." Ji Hun reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. He handed it to the priest, who opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was an official marriage license, already filled out and signed. The priest's eyes went wide. "How did you?" "Everything you need is there," Ji Hun said. "Everything is legal. All you have to do is perform the ceremony." The priest looked at Adana, searching her face for some sign of coercion. Adana nodded. She wouldn't walk out of here as the woman Kofi abandoned. She wouldn't give him that power. The priest opened his Bible with shaking hands. He rushed through the words, clearly wanting this over with. "Do you, Ji Hun Park, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do," Ji Hun said without hesitation. "Do you, Adana Okafor, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Adana looked at Ji Hun, at the calm strength in his eyes, at the tattoos that marked him as someone with history, with depth. She thought about Kofi's cruelty, about the cameras, about the humiliation. Then she thought about this stranger who had stopped her from chasing a man who didn't want her, who had offered her dignity when she had none left. "I do," she said, her voice stronger than she expected. "Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." Ji Hun cupped her face with both hands, his tattooed fingers gentle against her skin. He leaned down and pressed his lips to her forehead, chaste, respectful, but somehow more intimate than anything else could have been. When he pulled back, he said quietly, so only she could hear, "You're safe now. I promise." Adana believed him. Ji Hun took her hand and walked her down the aisle. Past her shocked mother, her furious father, her stunned bridesmaids. Past 400 guests with their phones raised, recording everything. She didn't care anymore. For the first time since Kofi had ripped that ring off her finger, she didn't feel like she was drowning. Outside, a sleek black car waited. A man in a dark suit opened the door. Ji Hun helped her inside, gathering her massive dress, and slid in beside her. The car pulled away. Adana watched the church disappear in the rearview mirror, growing smaller and smaller until it was gone entirely. She pressed her hands to her face, her whole body shaking as the adrenaline drained away. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Somewhere you can breathe," Ji Hun said. "Somewhere no one will bother you." "I don't understand any of this. I don't understand why you did what you did." "I don't want anything from you," Ji Hun said matter-of-factly. "I saw what was happening and made a choice. That's all." "That's not all," Adana said, hearing the hysteria creeping into her voice. "People don't just marry random strangers." Ji Hun was quiet for a moment, looking out at the city passing by. When he spoke again, his voice was softer, tinged with something like sadness. "I know what it feels like to be humiliated in front of people who are supposed to care about you," he said. "I know what it feels like to have everyone watching and no one helping. I didn't want that for you." Adana stared at him, hearing the weight of unspoken history in those words. The car stopped in front of a towering glass building. Ji Hun helped her out, and they entered a marble lobby that screamed wealth. A private elevator required a key card. They rode to the penthouse level. The doors opened into an apartment bigger than any place Adana had ever seen. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic city view. Everything was sleek, modern, expensive. An older Korean woman appeared, her eyes widening at Adana's wedding dress. Ji Hun spoke to her in Korean, then turned to Adana. "This is Mrs. Lee. She manages my home. She'll help you with anything you need." Mrs. Lee gestured toward the hallway. Panic flashed through Adana. "Where is she taking me?" "To a room where you can change and rest," Ji Hun said. "You've been through a lot today." Adana nodded, exhaustion overwhelming her. Mrs. Lee gently guided her down the hallway. Adana looked back at Ji Hun, and he was standing in the middle of his expensive apartment, watching her with those dark, unreadable eyes. "Don't stop now. Make sure you're subscribed because this is where everything changes and you'll want to know what happens next." Adana woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows. For a moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then it all came flooding back. Kofi, the altar, the humiliation, the tattooed stranger who had married her instead. She sat up in bed and realized she was wearing soft pajamas. Mrs. Lee must have helped her change last night. The last thing she remembered was collapsing onto the bed, too exhausted to even cry anymore. There was a knock on the door. "Come in," Adana called, her voice hoarse. Ji Hun entered carrying a tray with coffee and breakfast. He was dressed more casually now, black jeans and a black t-shirt that revealed the full extent of his tattoos. They covered both arms, intricate designs that told stories she couldn't read, and she could see more peeking above his collar, climbing up his neck. He looked less like a businessman and more like someone you'd cross the street to avoid. But his eyes were as calm as they'd been yesterday. "How did you sleep?" he asked, setting the tray on the bedside table. "I don't know," Adana admitted. "I don't even remember falling asleep." Ji Hun nodded. "That's normal. Your body shut down to protect you from the trauma." Adana looked at him, really looked at him. "Who are you? And don't just tell me your name. Tell me who you really are." Ji Hun was quiet for a moment, then sat in the chair across from the bed. "I own a security company," he said. "Private protection, high-level risk management. I was at your wedding because I was hired to provide security for one of your guests, a business executive who's been receiving threats." "So you just, what? Saw what was happening and decided to intervene?" "Yes. That's insane. Perhaps. Ji Hun's expression didn't change. But I meant what I said yesterday. I know what humiliation feels like. I know what it's like to be destroyed in front of people who should protect you. His hand unconsciously went to one of his tattoos, Korean characters on his forearm. These tattoos? Each one represents something I survived. Someone who hurt me. A lesson I learned the hard way. Adana felt her throat tighten. What happened to you? That's a story for another time, Ji Hun said gently. Right now, we need to talk about what happens next. What do you mean? We're legally married, Adana. That's real. But you have choices. He leaned forward, his dark eyes serious. You can walk away right now. I'll have my lawyers handle an annulment. You'll never have to see me again. Or you can stay. We can make this work, not as strangers, but as partners. No pressure, no expectations beyond mutual respect. You need time to heal. I can give you that. You need protection from the media circus that's probably already started. I can give you that too. Adana's phone had been buzzing non-stop since she'd woken up. She hadn't looked at it yet, hadn't had the courage. What would that even look like? She asked. However you want it to look, Ji Hun said. You can stay here, have your own space. We get to know each other. See if this could be something real. Or we maintain separate lives and handle this as a business arrangement until enough time has passed for a quiet divorce. Your choice. Adana thought about going home, facing her family, facing the videos that were undoubtedly all over social media by now. Facing Kofi's betrayal over and over again every time someone looked at her with pity. Then she looked at Ji Hun, this strange, tattooed man who had given her dignity when she had none. Who had stood between her and humiliation. Who was sitting here now, offering her choices instead of demands. I want to stay, Adana heard herself say. Not forever. Not as some business arrangement. But I want to know who you are. I want to understand why you did this. And maybe. She paused, gathering courage. Maybe I want to see if this insane thing could actually become something real. For the first time since she'd met him, Ji Hun smiled. It transformed his face, softening the dangerous edges, revealing the man beneath the tattoos and the controlled intensity. Then we start there, he said. Over the following weeks, Adana discovered that Ji Hun was nothing like she'd expected. He was patient, giving her space when she needed it but always there when she wanted to talk. He taught her about Korean culture, cooked her meals that tasted like comfort, and never once asked for anything physical beyond the occasional hug when she was crying about the betrayal. He told her about his own past, growing up in Seoul, joining a gang as a teenager after his father abandoned the family, the violence that had marked his skin and his soul. How he'd fought his way out, built a legitimate business, but kept the tattoos as a reminder of where he'd come from. Adana told him about Kofi, about the years she'd spent trying to be perfect for a man who never truly saw her. About her family's pressure to marry well, to be respectable. About the dreams she'd buried to become someone else's idea of acceptable. 3 months after their wedding, they were having dinner when Ji Hun said, I want to show you something. He rolled up his sleeve to reveal a blank space on his forearm, the only place on his arms without ink. I was saving this space, he said quietly. For something important. For someone important. Adana's breath caught. Ji Hun. I'm falling in love with you, Adana, he said, his dark eyes holding hers. I didn't plan it. I didn't expect it. But it's happening, and I wanted you to know. No pressure. No expectations. Just truth. Adana felt tears slide down her cheeks, but for the first time in months, they weren't tears of pain. I'm falling in love with you too, she whispered. Ji Hun reached across the table and took her hand, the same hand he'd held at that altar, the same hand he'd held as her world collapsed. But this time, when he squeezed it gently, it felt like a promise instead of a rescue. Then let's do this right, he said. Let's build something real. Not because we have to, but because we want to. Adana smiled through her tears. 6 months ago, Kofi had destroyed her in front of 400 people. But that destruction had led her here, to a tattooed Korean man with a dark past and a gentle heart. To someone who had seen her at her absolute worst and chosen her anyway. Sometimes, she thought, the worst day of your life becomes the door to something better. She just had to be brave enough to walk through it. Yes, Adana said. Let's build something real. And in that expensive penthouse, with the city lights glittering below them, two strangers who had become husband and wife began the real work of becoming partners, lovers, and maybe, someday, each other's home. If you loved this story, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell. Drop a comment telling me what you thought of Ji Hun and Adana's journey. More amazing stories coming your way.